So the teaching today is on the shrine, and I am getting this teaching pretty much directly from a transcript of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's titled A Teaching on the Shrine. And this would be available through KTD. It's a short transcript. And so I thought this would be good to go over a little bit about a shrine like in our center or in any other Gompa, but also to go over a shrine in your own home. And so Rinpoche starts out by saying that the shrine needs to have meaning to the practitioner. And he talks about spiritual materialism. And he defines that as, quote, religious appreciation based on infatuation or ego glorification. So I don't know about this so much today. Most of the people that I come in contact out here are older and have been involved with Buddhism for a long time. But when you first come in contact with Buddhism, it can be easily looked at like this is something exotic, something really different. And if I get involved with this, it will take me, you might say, away from the ordinary life that I'm leading that I'm not so happy with. And you kind of have a spiritual high. And so that's what's meant by this, that thinking that there's something absolutely fantastic or mystical about Tibetan culture and the different objects that are on the shrine and so on and so forth. But that's not what this is all about. All of these have deep meanings, and you really have to immerse yourself into Tibetan Buddhism and practice and contemplation, and then you start seeing what the real significance is of all of these different objects. So, and I guess an example that comes from from the late 60s up until perhaps the present time is that at least in the late 60s, it was common for people to drop acid and then in a group, and then someone would read from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and all about the colors and so on and so forth that you experience in the bardo. And that's, you might say, the peak or the epitome of spiritual materialism. So in terms of a placement of a personal shrine, it's you need a good place, and he describes it as a place free of fighting or danger, and free of the possibility of someone telling you that you can't practice there or you can't practice at all. So that's the first thing. And in terms of size of the shrine, he says to have it well built, and this is a quote here, well built, as dignified as possible, and the higher the better. Now, the Tibetan shrine generally sit on the floor rather than on a shelf on the wall. If you go into a Chinese restaurant, they'll have a shrine up just below the ceiling on the wall. But the Tibetan tradition is to have it sitting on something that is sitting on the floor. And there are different numbers of tiers or layers on shrines. You can have a one-tier shrine, just one surface, and that's fine. And that symbolizes that there is only one ultimate fruition. Then there is a three-tiered shrine, and this symbolizes offering your body, speech, and mind. or you're clinging to a personal self, your ego clinging to the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened objects of refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And this opens you up to experiencing the realization of the three kayas of the Buddha. Now, he talks a little bit about shrines in formal shrine rooms, public shrine rooms. And I'll go through this briefly, but you don't have to concern yourself too much with this. But he says that a 5-tiered shrine represents the 5 Buddha families. The enlightened aspect of mind are the top level. They symbolize, you put statues, texts, stupa there. Stupa contains relics of a enlightened being. If you received a satsa of Khenpo Rinpoche's ashes, then you would put that on the top level of your shrine, even if it's a 3-tiered, and if it's a 1-tiered, you put it there. So then the tiers 2 through 4 going down are offerings to the gurus, inner offerings made to the Yidam deities, and then secret offerings made to the protectors. So you have the gurus, the Yidam deities, and the protectors represented by those 3 tiers. And then the 5th one is general offerings of food and drink, the 8 regular offerings that we make when we do Vaitara and do Amitabha. So to go on here, you want your shrine to be neat, clean, orderly, and harmonious. That this is an expression of inherent dignity and sanity. Both of the enlightened objects of refuge and your own inherent dignity and sanity. So if a person that was not familiar with Buddhism would see your shrine, you would want them to have a favorable impression. It needs to be inspiring and uplifting to you or anybody else that would see it. And so he says that to make it as beneficial to ourselves and others as we possibly can. And it's an example of discipline, which is one of the 6 perfections. And so this is how we develop discipline. And again, discipline isn't punishing yourself. You're not doing this as an act of punishment, but you are doing this because you are encouraging yourself to do what is ultimately in your own best interest. You're avoiding harming yourself by being sloppy and messy and dirty and so forth. And you're engaging in very meritorious, beneficial activity. So there also is a perfection of generosity. And so this has to do with the offerings. The size of the offerings is not important. What is important is our attitude and motivation. That we need to do these things with sincerity and a sense of being genuine. A sense of no hesitation. a very simple one-tiered shrine would just have uh, 8 water bowls on it. And one reason why we offer water is because water is essentially, in this country anyway, free. You don't have to walk a quarter of a mile to a well or to a stream and so forth to get the water. That all you do is turn the tap on. Uh, so by making these offerings, you might say, with a sense of sincerity and just doing it to make offerings to the enlightened objects of refuge, we develop or we weaken the habit of greed and miserliness and develop the habit of giving. So it's also good to avoid pride. It's so easy for our kleshas to get involved in our Dharma practice. So it's important to, when we do this, and again, this is one reason for offering water, because how can you be proud about offering water? So make sure that the shrine is kept clean and neat. Things are arranged properly and not with your offering bowls, not kind of, if you would look at them from the front, that there's not more space between some bowls and less between others. And if you would look at them from the side, they would fall into a straight line rather than looking like little kids set them up there. And this is an expression of purity and freedom, which is the nature of discipline. Discipline, good discipline is, behind it is the nature, purity and freedom. So the perfection of patience is take time to care for your shrine without thinking it's a burden, or it's just one of lots of other things that you need to do in your life. So I have a certain feeling about this is one of the most important things I need to do in my life. This is not like doing the dishes. This is not like setting up, dusting, and then replacing the little objects that your favorite objects that were on top of the bookcase. Like vases, flowers, artificial flowers, and maybe a sculpture of something or another, picture, whatever. That this is extremely important, more important than that. Now, the next of the perfections is diligence. And that means joyful exertion. So the diligence here means being consistent, being joyfully consistent, not just when it's convenient. That if you set up a shrine, tend to it every day. Keep to it every day. In the morning, you fill up the water bowls. In the evening, you empty the water bowls. And when I talk about evening at KTD, when I'm there, I do Mahakala in the Mahakala Shrine Room, and they've been starting about 4:30 and finish by 5:30. And at that point, they empty the bowls in the Mahakala Shrine Room. In the main room, main shrine room, I'm not sure when they empty them, but I think it's around a similar time to that. And so that is the perfection of diligence. is having a certain joy, full consistency in tending your shrine. Perfection of meditation is being mindful when you are tending the shrine, when you are being a shrine keeper. The Tibetan is chupan. Cho means offer. So fill each bowl carefully while paying attention. Don't let your mind wander without bringing it back to what you're doing. This is a wonderful time to really practice mindfulness. And what is the standard practice is that you fill up the first bowl and you start with the argam bowl. And I'll go into these bowls in a little bit more detail, but you start with the argam bowl, which is the first water bowl there. The first two bowls are both water bowls. So you start with the first water bowl and you fill it up as full as you want to. And you want to make good offerings. So you want to, this avoids stinginess, like I said. So you want to fill the bowl up. You don't fill it up till it's overflowing, or where when you do empty it, you're going to spill it because it's so full. But don't leave it almost full. You really have to fill it. And then you go to the next one and fill it. And then you go to the third water bowl, and that is on the other side of the offering of light, and you fill it. And again, fill it so that the bowl is full. I've never seen a good shrine keeper fill up the first bowl most of the way, fill up the second bowl most of the way, fill up the third bowl rest of the way, then see how much water is in the pitcher left, and then distribute it evenly. You just fill up the first bowl until it's full, the second bowl till it's full. If you're running out of water, then go get some more water. I had to do that today in my personal shrine room. So that's meditation and mindfulness. So the perfection of wisdom, the sixth paramita, is that these offerings are made to the enlightened objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, and to an advanced practitioner of Vajrayana. They're also made to the three roots, the Guru, the Yidam deities, and the protectors. And it is done to accumulate merit and the qualities in all of these beings here. It's also done to rid sentient beings of their confusion. And so it's good to dedicate the merit of having made these offerings to all sentient beings. And so this leads to us developing wisdom, and eventually leads to the perfection of wisdom. So Rinpoche says it's really excellent if you can maintain mindfulness and discipline throughout the whole day, no matter what you're doing. And don't put things on the shrine that shouldn't be there or don't belong there. Just use it to put Dharma. Don't, for instance, come into the shrine room with a glass of water and you've got some things to do and you have to put your glass down and put it on the shrine. That would be improper. So just put Dharma objects on the shrine. So now to go over the 8 offering bowls, and to just go over them quickly. We are making these offerings to enlightened beings for us to accumulate merit and to benefit all sentient beings, both ultimately and relatively. So on a shrine that is set up for a male deity like Chenrezig, you would start on the left, and this would be the order. You would have drinking water first, then second is bathing water, third is flowers, fourth is incense, fifth is lamps, sixth is perfumed water or fragrance, seventh is food, and eighth is music. So they would go from left to right. If we are doing a practice for a female deity, then they would go the other direction. And some of you noticed this when Khenpo Tenkong was here last May and early June. Khenpo, his brother, and myself, we went out to the shrine room and chanted Green Tara every morning. And he rearranged the bowls on our shrine so that it was set up for a female deity. And I've kept it that way because we do white Tara regularly in there. And so on a more elaborate shrine, you could have, and I've seen this, you would have 2 tiers of offering bowls, and one would be going from left to right, and the other would go from right to left for both female and male deities. So the purpose of offering drinking water is, and I'll say this, that what is being explained now by Khenpo Rinpoche is frequently chanted in some of these more advanced, elaborate Vajrayana deity practices. So enlightened beings have no need for water. And Rinpoche says they're not excited or displeased if it is made or if it is skipped. It is done to accumulate merit and to relatively eliminate the thirst of the lower realms, especially the hell realms and the Yidok realms, but even in the animal realm, thirst can be a significant problem. For instance, if you happen to have your home in the desert. And ultimately, the quote, water of Dharma alleviates the suffering of all sentient beings. So it's kind of a metaphor. The next, and that's Argam. Padyam is bathing water. And again, enlightened beings don't need it. They're not attached to them, and they don't need to take a bath. But we're offering this water as a way to clean the karmic patterns of all sentient beings. The next is flowers or pupe. And again, enlightened beings don't need flowers. The relative meaning of this is that may all sentient beings temporarily experience the higher realms. And ultimately, may they experience the Buddha's body. Dupe, or incense, is the fourth offering. And relatively, may it eliminate the unwholesome smells of bad discipline. And so Rinpoche says bodhisattvas emanate a profound fragrance. like incense all the time. And it's not dependent on bathing or washing clothes. And so this is to eliminate the unwholesome smells of bad discipline. And the point being about enlightened beings and bodhisattvas is they don't smell due to bad discipline. And so their body is not generating whatever it is that causes our bodies to smell. The next is lamps or aloke. And the relative meaning of this is that may all sentient beings have relative wisdom arise. Prajna is the Sanskrit word. May they have the ability to discern what is proper and beneficial. And so Rinpoche says that if we apply a sense of wisdom and intelligence to whatever we undertake, it will not be wasted action. And we will start accumulating those qualities and ultimately attain Buddhahood. So that is aloke, lamps. Gende is perfumed water. And this would be used after bathing to have the smell, the body smell pleasant. So ultimately, may all sentient beings experience the awakened state, which is aware of the natural purity and perfection of all things, since all things are ultimately, all sentient beings are ultimately Buddha, and the environment is ultimately a pure land. So as a result of making this offering of perfumed water, quote, everything we encounter radiates goodness and has a most soothing and enlightened smell. So that's the perfection of making that offering. The next is food, and it's nuade. And any clean food is suitable for making this offering. I'm going to go back to the perfumed water. What is standard in Tibetan Buddhism is that you would add saffron to that water bowl. And again, be generous with the adding of the saffron. So then the food, clean food, it could be any kind of food. It could be, well, the standard one is torma, which is a stylized shape. And the tormas are many, many different shapes of tormas. They're peaceful, they're wrathful tormas. There are tormas for different deities and so forth. But basically, a torma is made out of, in this country, quick oats and butter and a little bit of oil, and it's totally edible. And so that's the idea of its food. It's interesting because the tormas that are made in Tibetan Buddhism can be quite beautiful and very sculptural and look like an object. And some of them it's more a stylized, but it means it's a food offering. And you could use a cookie, you could use a piece of fruit. There are lots of things that could be used for that food offering. Relatively, it means may all sentient beings be free of starvation and hunger. And the ultimate meaning is may all sentient beings live on the food of meditation. Shabda is the last one. And this can be any musical instrument that is used in our Dharma practice. Some are more practical because we're putting this in an offering bowl. So what is most practical would be like a small bell, a miniature bell as in a bell and dorje set, a tingsha, which are hand symbols. Here, I'll get one set of tingsha. This is a set of tingsha. And they can just be put in an offering bowl, kind of like this on the shrine. And a conch is frequently used. That might be the one that is used the most. And the idea is that a conch, if you cut off the end, you can blow it and it makes music. So the meaning of this is that may all painful, irritating, and harmful sounds be eliminated, and may the self-sounding nature of Dharma pervade all sentient beings. So those are the 8 offerings. And if you use artificial flowers, use good artificial flowers. There's nothing wrong with artificial flowers. Fresh flowers are fine too. But again, when they're starting to get old, it's time to put new, fresh flowers in. What I have used also at our center in my own personal shrine is there are stylized representations of the flower offering that you can buy at the KTD bookstore and other places and put them in the offering bowl for flowers. They're permanent, and there also are very nice incense offerings that are made specifically for putting in the shrine bowl. And then when it comes to the food offering, again, there is a stylized torma, which you can get, many different forms of tormas that you can get and put in your food bowl. And they're called permanent tormas. And that, what it means is all of these last much longer than like a fresh flower or like a torma or a cookie or a cracker or something like that. Again, if you go this way, make sure they're nice ones and that they're appropriate. And they come in different sizes, and make sure that your flower offering, your incense offering, and your food offering are all in a good size range. So you don't have one that's large and the other that is small. So then, on page 6, Rinpoche says this: when making the offerings, it is essential to be immersed in the action and to maintain a very personal sense of the presence of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, enlightened masters of the lineage, and deities of practice. So you want to keep this sense of them being present in the shrine room with you. Again, all of this is done so that your offerings will be the most meaningful and effective and the most benefit to you and all sentient beings. So fill the 3 water bowls if you're having 8 bowls. If you have just 7 water bowls. Fill all the water bowls in the morning before you practice. Even if you don't practice that day, if you've got a shrine in your room, in your house somewhere, go up and fill the bowls. Let me see what else here. I also have for the aloke, the light offering, I have an electric light. We have that in our shrine room too because of concerns about a fire hazard. And so you can get rechargeable little votive candles that you could put in a lamp that you would use as a butter lamp, but put that in there instead. And then you have your lamp offering. What I did, and I'm just a little more creative, I guess, in that respect, is I had one of those that was a rechargeable one, and I wanted to avoid recharging it. And so I hooked up a power converter that went to some other electronic device that I no longer was using, and got inside of the votive and hooked up the wires to the votive where the battery would have been. And then I drilled a little hole in the bottom of the butter lamp and ran the wire through that, hooked it up to the votive, and now I have a aloke that is safe. And I've had people in my room practicing, and they've tried to light incense on it, and they failed. So I guess it looks pretty good. So along with these actual offerings, it's good to have imagined offerings, and just imagine that you're offering vast amounts, imaginary offerings. So again, this is working on the perfection of generosity. So finally, when you enter the shrine room, have a sense of the presence of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, and the deities. And it's good to have a sense of joy and openness at their presence. So you need to be both physically and mentally practicing. It's if your mind isn't present, shall I say, if your mind isn't practicing, even though you're sitting in the shrine room and chanting, there's not too much benefit. I guess it would be better than not being in there at all. But what we're trying to do is develop an uplifted state of mind. We're trying to develop a discipline. And it's good to feel that coming into the shrine room is not a restriction, that it's keeping you from doing other things, but it leads to sanity, leads to freedom. And Rinpoche says that if necessary, it's fine to sit in a chair, but don't stretch out or lay down. Don't be too informal. And of course, no smoking, no alcohol, no recreational drugs. And all of this helps control our monkey mind. Meditation is it's joining our body and our mind, and chanting joins our body and our mind. And this helps us receive the most benefit from our practice and our time in the shrine room. So a personal shrine, there are lots of different objects that you can have, and It depends on what you feel you have a connection with, what practices you are doing, and so forth. Um, it's good to have tankas, the paintings hanging on the wall in your room. Uh, and and don't put Buddhist objects in bathrooms. Don't put any kind of a Dharma object in a bathroom. That's considered improper. And Rinpoche has said other places, don't decorate your house with them. Well, if you've been to my house, I'm not sure. Sometimes it might look like that. But the idea is to treat them with respect. And having these objects in certain areas can help remind you of the three jewels, remind you of your Dharma practice, and remind you of your Buddha nature. So what I would like to do now, actually, I don't know how well this would work. I'd like to actually pick up this and take it over to the my shrine. I'm doing this in my shrine room, and kind of just go over a few things that are in my shrine room. Okay, so you can see here, there on the bottom level are my water bowls. And here is one of these stylized flower offerings that I mentioned. Right here is a incense offering that's stylized. Here is my light offering. And you can see it's not too hot. And then here is a stylized torma offering. And then I've got a conch there. Then on the second level is a mandala offering, and here are kapalas on both sides. And then I don't have enough room on top for all my rupas, and so I have a lot of rupas here. And many of these have to do with practices that I did in the 3-year retreat, and I'm doing short versions of them now. In the center here is White Tara. And then I've got Dorje Chang up there. And then you can see I've got pictures of Rinpoche, Karmapa, Trangu Rinpoche here, and then Jamgun Khantrul III up on top. I have him up there because I took a Kala Chakra empowerment with him.